Well, welcome to another episode of According to Flint. And this week, excited, happy, honored, all of those things to have this week's guest. He is the former and first CEO of the Professional Bull Riders, former CEO of IndyCar with Rural Media Group, the brainchild of the American. Many jobs, many hats he wears. Currently a co-manager of a young up-and-coming country music artist named Garth Brooks. It is one and only Randy Bernard. When you're the co-manager of Garth Brooks, give me a job description. Good to see you, Randy, by the way. What is your job description with your work with Garth Brooks?
Listen, I clean toilets, I sweep floors, I do whatever they ask me to do. I mean, I am not above any of that. So but you know, I think there's a lot of times during COVID, we are cutting wood, we are building fence, or we're building bridges, or building houses. I mean, we do it all this right now. But during the season, you know, we're working on licensing, publishing, concerts, stadium shows, whether they're or arena shows, and all his publicity, what TV shows he's going to do, which just all of that, which is going to be he's talking to us about which his next single is going to be, when his new album's coming out. So there's tremendous amount, and I would say that we're always trying to be about 2 years in advance. So everything that we're working on now is going to be for 2 years from now. So we work that far out on most of our projects.
That's got to be difficult right now. I mean, who knew last year right now we'd be sitting in this position? Are you planning 2 years out as if everything's going to be okay 2 years from now? Is that kind of what your plan is?
Well, so what happened on this is basically the entertainment world shut down. So what we've been doing for the last 12 months, 10 months, is continuing just playing musical chairs with these stadiums, thinking that if it's going to be 6 months, we didn't know if it was going to be 6 months or a year and a half. So we looked at 6 months. We moved everything to 6 months, and that didn't happen. We moved it to a year, and now that's going to happen. Now we're going to move another 6 months, and we're just continuously moving stadiums around to trying to get a stadium tour sometime this year. And everyone, the big magic question right now is when. You know, we're optimistic that it could be mid-June or late June, but there's no one has the real answer right now.
Yeah, that's what I keep telling people that I'm around, even in my position with PBR. If you want to gauge for kind of the temperature of the country, look at the live event industry. If they're starting to sell as many tickets as they can, that's your gauge. That's your, okay, things are moving forward. I feel it in the tone of people. I don't see it in the actions of the actual industry, but I do feel like the tone is starting to lean a different way.
It really is.
And I think you guys would probably have your hand on the pulse of it better than I do.
Yeah, we're always talking to industry leaders and movers and shakers, and I think, you know, I mean, so much of this is about science, so that none of the industry knows what the hell's going on. But I think, you know, we look at what Live Nation and these guys are planning for, and we're just trying to, you know, we're ready to go. If President Biden said we're opening the country tomorrow, I promise you Garth will have a show tomorrow. I mean, that's how quickly we can move.
I will say, and I said before we went on the air, and I'm jumping right in this. I wouldn't cover it, but as this airs, it's all over. But Garth sings "Amazing Grace" at the inauguration, and his goal there, and this to me, I've never met Garth Brooks all these years. Thanks, Randy. I appreciate that. I've never met Garth. He seems like the kind of guy that says, you know what, I'm going to go do this because I'm going to be the guy that steps in and tries to bring something together here. It does nothing but good, in my opinion.
And you hit it right on the head. If you know Garth, people that know Garth know how loving, appreciative, kind, humble that guy is. And he had no ambition to promote one of his songs, or the night that Mrs. Biden called him at the house, he took a deep breath and goes, wow, this is, I love to work for the president of the United States, whether who it is, whether you're Republican or Democrat. And he said, he goes, let's take some time and think about this, and we'll make a decision tomorrow. And he came back and says, I really want to do this. And he goes, I don't want a political stance. I want this to stand for unity. He goes, I am a registered Republican, but he goes, for God's sakes, all we've seen on the news is how divisive this country is right now, and what a lightning bolt it is to talk about politics. And he goes, I was put on this earth to play music, and music is one of those things that should be able to relieve that. And he goes, if it helps, great. And that's what he did. We asked him if he was going to perform one of his songs, and he said, no. He goes, I want this to be about unity. And he goes, people, might take, he wanted to make sure it stayed focused on this. And everyone wants to say, well, he didn't play President Trump's inauguration. And I was right there talking with everybody. I was the one that called and said he wasn't going to be able to do it. He had events in Cincinnati, Ohio, I believe it was. We had 4 or 5 sold out shows, and there was a chance he was going to have to do another show. And we were in Cincinnati on that Friday. If they could have moved the inauguration a day or two,
sure,
Garth would have done the President Trump's. I mean, he respects the office of the United States, and he does not like to play politics. But unfortunately, it's so divisive right now. I just hate to see what's on Twitter, but there's so many people that I think after they saw it, there was that feeling of love in the air, and a feeling of whether it's right or wrong, he's trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I completely agree with you. I'm just so tired of it. There's been enough of it. So if one guy's going to do it, to me, that was the guy. But, you talk about the kind of guy he is, and then we'll get to some other stuff. But now that I have you, I also picture him, we see that stage persona, which a lot of us have. But I also see, because of what he's done in his career and with what he has driven, intense, competitor, perfectionist. Those are words I think of. Am I on the right track there?
I mean, I will go to the studio with him sometimes at 10 in the morning, and he'll finish at 3 or 4 in the morning. And I'm not talking about, he didn't cut 2 or 3 songs. He was still working on one song. You might hear one song in that studio, 150, 200 times before he gets it right. And I mean, it's just everything he does. When he's doing his rehearsal shows, you might, that band might get there at 10 in the morning, and they're not going to leave till 11 or 12. He's going to make sure everything is perfect. When he does a sound check before every show, and it's with a full band, and they practice and practice. And sometimes you'll send the band away and say, now I just need an hour and a half to practice with my guitar. And I don't care what the conditions are. When we were at Paso Robles out there a few years ago, it was 117 on that stage when he had to do his rehearsal. And he stayed out there an hour and a half and was just come out soaking wet. But I mean, he is going to make sure that he is prepared to entertain. And that's what he is he's one, I think, the greatest entertainer of all time.
I do too. Agree. It's between, well, I don't know. Michael Jackson's right in there. Right? It's close with me, the two of them. So
he's the living legend.
That's right. The greatest living entertainer of all time.
And, I mean, but Michael Jackson was a great entertainer, and I think Garth would be the first to tell you. Garth has his heroes too, and I think he loves to watch great entertainers. He loved Queen. Queen was one of his, and Chris Ledoux. He said he learned as much from Chris Ledoux as anybody. He absolutely idolized Chris Ledoux.
Yeah, that's interesting. I saw you in December at the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo, which of course was in Arlington, Texas. There, maybe there was a bigger role. One of your roles was the openings of the rodeo, and with Cowboy Channel, kind of their expanded coverage a little bit. Those openings were put on television, on national television for people to see, which was, as far as I know, a first-time thing. In your mind, when you were putting openings together for the NFR, what did you want the people in the arena to see, and the people watching on TV? That had to be in your mind, that this was going out on TV. What did you want to portray or make them see in those openings for the rodeo?
That's a great question, because that's the exact question I asked myself from the first, when George Taylor called and asked if I would be interested in doing the openings, who's the CEO of PRCA. I said, I would love to think about it, because I said there's several things that we have to take in mind. First, 10 performances with 10 different openings.
Yeah.
I mean, that is crazy. And we had 60 days to pull it off. Or I don't even know if it's 60 days, 45. And then to the question of who are we going to cater to? If you're going to do it for the live crowd, or you're going to do it for the TV crowd. So we try to do, I'm going to say a little 70% more toward television and 30% for the audience, because we didn't have a black house that we could get completely black for the live crowd because of the new stadium. We didn't have the fog setup, the sound system. So we really wanted to make sure that it presented itself. And then the next thing, I think I went to George and said, George, we are going to go so red, white, and blue this year. We're going to be so Americana. I said, the one thing that we know about the Western lifestyle, whether you're rodeo or whatever you are, just a cowboy if you're a cowboy on a ranch, you love America. And I think it's just still bites me in the butt that our athletes, professional athletes, want to take a stand on their platform inside an arena and kneel during the national anthem. I still haven't gotten over that. And it really pisses me off, to be honest with you. And I think that there's a place to do that. If they want to do that at the post office on Monday on their time, go for it. But they're representing a sport, they're representing a team and a city, and all these kids all over America especially are watching this, and it's a terrible example. And that's one thing that Cowboys have never done. They have never knelt for a flag. They respect it, they protect it, they love it, and I want to showcase that. And I think it's we've got to be very proud of that. And these are athletes that have never had their time in the spotlight like these other athletes, especially when it comes to the financial and the television considerations. So it was very important for me to make sure that we did the right thing on television and for the live crowd around America.
I had somebody ask me recently, hey, what are you going to do in bull riding and rodeo when one of these athletes does kneel down? And I said, and I was with 2 or 3 other guys, and we said, that won't happen. Oh, well, you don't know. A person kind of argued, and we said, it won't happen. We're from a certain upbringing that I truly don't think it will happen. It's the culture we're in, I think.
I completely agree with you. I never see it happening.
Yeah. Did you get some pushback there? Wasn't there one night, first time ever, the athletes didn't come out state by state? That's a lot of people, that's their thing at the NFR. Montana, Mississippi, and with the flag. There was one night you didn't do that. Was there pushback on that?
I was so afraid. So I had this already in my concept from day one, but I was not going to share it with anyone until I got to rehearsals. And I wanted them to see the video and see how it was laid out before we did it. And after they watched the video, and there's some tears coming down some of the older guys' eyes, and they're like, that's the best opening we'll ever have. I'm like, well, you understand the Cowboys are going to walk out this night. And not one disagreement. Everyone says, this is going to be a special night. And there was not one negativity from the word. It was a green light from day one from that rehearsal on. And, that night I was afraid I was going to get some repercussion from the Cowboys. The Cowboys, I think Casey Fields said, he goes, I've got a bone to pick with you. He goes, it was hard for me to get on my horse because he goes, I had tears coming down my eyes. So I think that they were proud to do it, and I think it showed every one of them standing. We had the cameras down low, showing everybody with the hats on their heart, and I think it was, again, very, very emotional for a bunch of people.
Yeah, and I think this was the year to try something new. And I think you caught people in a year where everybody needed to try something new, and I think everybody was just glad to be there. Also not just glad to be there, but glad it was happening. So I thought it was a big step. And I asked that question because knowing rodeo like I do, I couldn't imagine somebody, not necessarily in the arena, but somebody saying, like, you got to get them damn guys riding that lap like they always do. You know the pushback.
There could have been some of that behind my back.
Yeah.
But they were very respectful to me, and it was a fun thing to do. But I will say right here, I'll be the first to announce it right now. I'm retired from opening the Flint Park.
That's it. You're a one and done. One and done.
It was great. Thank you, everybody, but it was done. it was I coming out of it. I got COVID and I lost 20 pounds. So it was just
yeah, I got it too.
Weight loss program.
I didn't lose 20 pounds, but he caught it. I caught it. Oh yeah. I will say that I would watch the openings, and having worked with you all those years, there were openings like the first night I watched. I said, oh, they're coming up on a lift. That's a Randy. I could pick out the Randy Bernard traits from the opening. You did not. The one thing you didn't do was try to fly Justin McBride off a horse and land him up on a stage. That's all. I'm
afraid I'd get my butt kicked at the rodeo arena. I knew Justin would do it for me. Justin owed me too much in fines. He couldn't argue about it.
We still will in meetings for openings say, hey, let's fly somebody off a paint horse and try to lift them up on it. We still use all that. Or put somebody in an Air Force jet. Yeah. This is inside stuff, but yeah. I hosted the first basically Road to the American TV show on RFD TV.
I remember.
Yeah. And so I was kind of there when all of this with the American was coming about. I was there when we revealed the name of it. How long did that roll around in your head, the concept of the American rodeo, to kind of, give us a little background on what your train of thought was, giving everyone a chance, the big money? There's just so many ins and outs to that.
Well, it was in 2001 when we started our NBC network show. Our first network show we ever did was down in Austin, Texas. We did a 2.4 rating. Well, right after that, John Miller called me back and said, hey, I need some new concepts if we want to do something different. So I created some different ones, and I had about 6 of them that I'd created. I spent a lot of time thinking about and opening. And the next one I wanted to do, because Texas is it's its own country, basically. They think they're their own country. So I wanted to do one Texas versus the world, because you had about 22 bull riders from Texas, and then you had everyone from Brazil, Australia, Canada, Mexico. Just have everyone else in the world match Texas. And it would have been at the Alamo Dome, back when they still had the Alamo Dome.
Yeah.
And I just thought that would have been such an amazing event. And my board hated it. They said, that's the stupidest idea you ever had. And I took all these other ideas to them. No one liked it. Well, I had this concept. I never had, we weren't going to do a rodeo, but I had it in the back of my mind. Well, then after the first year, probably 2000, it was 2007, the first year we did the PBR at AT&T Stadium. Jerry Jones came to me and goes, I want a rodeo. He goes, will you do a rodeo? And I go, Jerry, I'm committed to strictly to bull riding PBR, but I'm sorry, I can't. And so then when I went to IndyCar, they had a Super Bowl owners meeting in Indianapolis. He goes, you have time for dinner. So we went to Ruth Chris and had dinner. He goes, I still want that rodeo. Will you do it now? And I go, Jerry, I'm 100% committed to IndyCar. I'm sorry, I can't do it. Well, then fast forward about 3 years later, I'm at RFD TV, and Patrick's like, I want a great event. We want something that we can help rodeo, but we also a staple. I go, I've got it. So we flew down the next day, met with Jerry, said, Jerry, you still want that event? He was like, hell yeah. And it happened. And I think where Jerry was very instrumental, and Patrick, of course, Patrick was a major influence on it, was I wanted, the Houston Rodeo at that time paid $1.8 million in, I think it's 18 days.
Right.
Or 21 days, whatever it was. San Antonio was about 1.6 in that 18. I wanted an event that paid more than all of them in one day, $2 million in one day. And I'll never forget, I'm so excited to tell the Cowboys about this, and they have their I forget what they called the event in Omaha, Nebraska, where all the champions are there.
Yeah, I can't remember either. Some tour finale deal.
Exactly, tour finale. And they're all there. And I'm like, I can't wait to having a big dinner, a big breakfast laid out for them. I had all this food. I'm like, I just need an hour of your time. This is going to be the biggest rodeo, highest paid one-day rodeo in history. And so I'm all excited. We get there. I had never thought that no one would show up. I had 6 Cowboys walk in the room. Trevor Brazil was one of them. And I was so let down. I'm like, why didn't you guys come? They go, that rodeo is never going to happen. That's just a pie in the sky dream.
Really?
You guys pay us. And I'm going to throw a name out. Matt could kill me later. Matt Reeves goes, he goes, I get it. You're going to put up all this money. You're still going to make all the money. And I'm like, God. I don't get it, Matt. I said, we got all this risk. I said, And then I finally just said, instead of arguing with you, I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I will have my attorneys draw up the papers tomorrow, and I will allow you 50% of this event, but you're going to owe 50% of anything we lose on it. And that stopped that conversation. He was done with it right there. but we rolled the dice. I mean, and it wasn't highly successful. It was highly successful from a PR and an amazing thing for the Cowboys, but from a financial result for the RFD TV and us, it wasn't very good for the first couple of years.
Why is that always the reaction? And maybe not now. It has been successful for the Cowboys. There's been some other changes or whatever in rodeo, but why has there just been too many things that presented to Cowboys that didn't work, that they don't trust? Is it something different they don't trust? Why was that the first initial reaction?
I think that Cowboys get taken advantage of so many times. A sponsor will offer them $50,000 and end up paying them $10,000 or just giving them their clothes. I just think that they were wary, and I hadn't been in the rodeo business. I'd been in the professional bull riding business, so nobody really had an understanding of anything I'd not that it was important, but I was very confident this thing could work, and unfortunately, I think that they had just had such a bad taste in their mouth from so many events that hadn't worked that they just didn't want to give us the time. I think I'm proud to say I'm so excited to see other people trying to do major events like this. I mean, if you can pay out $2 million in one day, I think you can darn sure pay a lot more than what some of these rodeos are paying today.
You said something, and I actually had it written down on my fancy notes here. I hear a lot because I'm still in both, I work in the arena in PBR, but I have a big connection to rodeo, and I loved my career that I had in rodeo. I do stuff like this. So there's a connection there. And I hear a lot of people talking about fix rodeo. We need to fix rodeo. And you said what I have written down, add to rodeo. I always ask people, every rodeo I go to, there's record attendance. Guys are making pretty good money. The fans are excited. What do we need to fix? That's always my question is, what do you want to fix? What it comes down to is guys want to make more money.
Yeah.
That's what needs to be fixed. But really, what we need to do is add to presently what rodeo is. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that exactly right. I think I wanted to add more big rodeos. I mean, I think the smaller rodeos are a part of a backbone of this country, and especially rural America. But I think that these major rodeos, if you have 3 or 4 of these, it's going to separate and give those champions some serious money. And I don't think that Cowboys have been taken care of properly from a standpoint of what they make financially than what most sports do. I mean, surfers make more, for God's sakes. And it's sad to think that their apparel pay them more than Cowboys get. So my feeling is that it was a way to add to it. I think, what was sad to me overall, and I've never talked about this to anyone, but for the 15 years I was part of PBR, I loved road. That's what I did. I rode my whole life up until the time I went to PBR. But I became the enemy number one for rodeo as a target, as you're a betrayer, you're not help, and I never, when the PRC was going bust and they needed money, I think we sent them $50,000, and I didn't get a thank you. I'm not trying to get a thank, but it was like we didn't do anything, and every time I would try to give them help or advice, it was just I got slammed, and I just backed away. And then George Taylor came in. And George called me in his first week and said, "I'd just like to pick your brain." And, and he was just open and understanding. He wanted to understand and learn the sport. And I absolutely have so much respect for how George has just what he's done. Not that he had to listen to me. He probably didn't listen to me 80% of my ideas. But the fact that he was open to listen to anybody and everybody that was trying to help grow the sport, that was passionate about it. And I give him a lot of credit for that.
It's still there. And I don't get it. We have, at the PBR, we have PRCA world champion bull riders, and we introduced them as a PRCA world champion bull rider every time they ride a bull in a PBR arena. I'll tell you, this is not for sure not to call any individual out, but I see it strangely in different levels. My daughter was the National High School Rodeo student president at one time, and I went to one of the higher ups, adults, and said, PBR would like to step in and be the bull riding event sponsor. And the individual, I'll never forget, said, well, that's sure nice of them, but with our sponsorship with the PRCA, that's probably a conflict of interest. Where's the conflict? What, somebody wants to sponsor an event in high school rodeo, and there's a lot of people create a conflict where there is no conflict. Drives me crazy.
I always want to use all boats rise on a high tide. And if we can grow the sport in a different element, I mean, if you look at racing, it's such a great world to look at. You have so many genres of racing, and you might have Bridgestone and Goodyear over here, and you might have Continental and Michelin over here, but everybody brings the sport up. And we were bringing a much younger demographic with a rock and roll entity to it, or enhancement to it. While you had over here, you had rodeo, who was just had a very strong presence in Western cities, but it really wasn't growing to Madison Square Garden or Tampa Bay, Florida, or Worcester, Massachusetts. And that's what PBR was doing. And we were making the cowboy hat a little bit more famous in places like that.
Yeah, too many letters. My mom, as a kid, I remember my mom talking about the alphabet soup of rodeo, where you have the PRCA, the IPRA, the NRA, the PBR, and in the real world, if you put yourself out there in the real world, nobody knows the damn difference between. I mean, I still get it to this day. Hey, why aren't you at the circuit finals? Well, I do PBR stuff. What do you mean? I mean, that's places like Montana. So it is confusing for with all the letters, for sure.
But, oh my God, yes, no doubt.
Did you apply or have interest in being the PRCA commissioner ever?
Oh, that's in 1994 when Cody Lambert and Ty were sitting in my office, and I had a plane ticket to Colorado Springs. The commissioner at the time was Louis Cryer. Yeah. And he had asked me to become his for-profits, the general manager of for-profits of the PRCA. And they looked at my ticket. They're just, how those guys are. They're snooping on my desk. They had no right to. And if it would have been money, they'd have taken it, I'm sure. And they look at it and they go, "What are you going to Colorado Springs for?" And I'm Commissioner Cryer asked me if I want to be the for-profit general manager, and they come back to me that afternoon and go, "Why don't you become the CEO of PBR? We're looking for someone." And I'm like, guys, I thought they were kidding, so I didn't say anything. And then so 2 days later, I fly to Colorado Springs, and my plane was really, really late. I got in to the hotel about 2 a.m. My lights going tink, 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 before cell phones really were in. And he goes. It was Doug Quimby. He goes, "This is Doug Quimby, the attorney for the PBR. Before you take any job, please call us first." So I called him at 2:30 in the morning. I said, "Doug, this is Randy Bernard." He goes, "Whatever you do, don't take the job. We want to offer it to you." So I met with Louis. He offered me $55,000. I went and met with. I would not meet with him on that trip because the PRC paid my way. So I went home. They called me. They offered me $65,000. Cryer offered me $75,000. I'm like, holy smokes, I was making $35,000. And long story short, I decided to go with PBR because they said I could have 100% authority on anything I did. And I went back to Lou and said, "Louis, I'm going to take the PBR job, but I'm only taking it for $55,000. I don't want this to be about money right now. I believe in that I can be helpful to them." And I said, "And you've got a friend here. We can work together. We're going to be in the same town." And I did get along great with Louis Cryer. He was a great commissioner. He did some good things for the PRC. Yeah,
you said something that people have asked me about. Hey, what do you think, Randy Bernard? He should be the PRCA commissioner. He should be the PRCA commissioner. Here's the deal. People ask me all the time, "Do you like working for the PBR better than you like working for the PRCA?" I said, I never worked for the PRCA, not one time. Did I ever get a check from the PRCA? I worked for the Pendleton Roundup, the Ellensburg Rodeo, they're locally produced events rather than produced by the PRCA is the governing body. And I always said, I don't know that Randy could do it. And you said it, the PBR job, they gave you control. The PRCA does what it can with the charter it's been given, but there's a lot of chiefs in that circle, it seems like.
There's a lot of slices of pie. First and foremost, they've got the best CEO they could have. I will tell you, I think the world of George, and he is the right guy for the job because he has an even keel temperament, not like me.
What?
So he is the perfect guy. But let's look at this pie for a second. In the PBR, you really had the Cowboys, which was 90% of the pie, and you had the stock contractors, who were 10%. And every other piece of the pie was owned by us. And when you look at let's take the PRCAs now. You have 7 events. And barrel racing, and you have that's those. So those pieces of pies. Now you got to deal with the committees. Now you got to deal with the sponsors. Now you've got to deal with all the. There's one other big piece of pie I'm forgetting here.
Contract people. There's contract. I mean,
the contractors. Thank
contract
you.
personnel. And stock contractors. Yeah.
So so you had so many people, and the stock contractors used to be so big in the organization that the Cowboys weren't getting their real say, and it's so political. And I think George has done a great job of bringing everyone together and getting everyone focused on the future. And I think there's enough money funneling in there now that I think the worst times are behind George. I think George has 100% of the support of his board, which they should, because he's a hell of a good guy and he's a great leader. Well,
and I'm glad you say that, because I don't know. I've met George a couple times, but I'm not in the inside of the world for sure. So that definitely is good to know. You take the job as PBR CEO. Right now, looking back, it seems like a no-brainer, but when you take the CEO job of the PBR at that time from being a fair manager in California, was that a step up or a horizontal step or a little down?
It was probably just horizontal. I mean, I'll never forget, I had a beautiful office in California Mid-State Fair. Absolutely beautiful. I was making a lot of decisions. I knew everybody in town. And my first day when I walked into my office, I'm not kidding you, and I'll put my hand on, you asked Doug Quimby this. It was a broom closet, basically. It was about a 10 by 10 room. I had a card table, one of those little fold-up card tables, and a folding chair with a phone on it. I was the secretary. I was the toilet cleaner. I was everything except for the secretary treasurer, which Doug did that for us. And I'm telling you, I mean, first and foremost, it's the only way it should have been, because I learned nobody was going to fool me on any piece of the PBR. I knew it from the inside out because I did it. And I did it all those years. And, my first employee I ever hired was Jay Preston. And then we went to, that was my second, there was 2 of us. And then all of a sudden 3 and 4. And I think when we left, I had about 130 staff, and some major changes. I absolutely, it was by far my favorite part of my life.
I have discussions all the time, because my first PBR World Finals was 1997. So practically, that's a long time. I mean, I know I'm only 38, but it's a long time.
You remember the first time we met? I could tell you exactly. Not the first time we met. The first time I offered you a full-time job, I met.
As a matter of fact, I do. It was a New Year's bull riding in Minneapolis in the hallway, backstage. Was it Cincinnati?
The river right there, Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And I went to you after the event, and I said, "Hey, Flint," I said, "I'd like to bring you on full-time." Mm-hmm. And basically, you looked at me kind of funny and said, "No, I don't think so." It was my birthday. I think it was January 31st.
Might have been. I think what I said was, do you know what I make? Do you know what I'm, but in a sense, what I did was listed, like, I had 1 Coors Man in the can. There was this I said, with all my bonuses, this is what I do. And in my head, that was.
I think I offered you 4 times that much that night alone. Before I think I went like 10 times by the time you negotiated. You did get the better hand on me on that. But it paid off, and I could tell you right now, I think you bring more fans to the PBR than any other piece of the PBR. Besides those Cowboys, I know those Cowboys are important, don't get me wrong, and those Bulls. But I'm telling you right now, I could not imagine all those years without Flint Rasmussen in the barrel.
Well, I appreciate that.
I'm telling you, you were a major part of so many fans.
Well,
and the energy you brought, the excitement, the fun. I could watch you do something. You're going to change it every night, which made it even better. But it was just, I mean, there was pieces of the show. I don't care if I was supposed to be up doing settlement. I was going to be somewhere where I could see you doing your dance, the Lord of the Dance, or all those. So I mean, it was always fun.
The other day, Andy Watson, who's still our photographer, sent me a picture. He said, well, since we're going to these old school places, these small venues now, maybe you should bring back old stuff. And I'm flying through the air doing the battered salmon. And in the background of the picture is Bill Engvall, the comedian, and his wife, Jewel, because she was there at that time with Ty, and you're leaning on the fence, and I could just see you smiling. Lean back smiling, and I told Andy, I'll bring that material back if I can bring back my hair that I had in the picture.
I want to comment that picture, by the way. I would love that picture.
I'll have to send it to you. I'll forward it to you. So,
all right, that'd be great.
And I've even given you a bad time. People will look what Randy did with the PBR. He did this. Didn't that was in the days, in the early 90s, there wasn't a standalone bull riding event on every corner like there is now. PBR was groundbreaking. Yes, there were standalone. There had been the bull riders only into the PBR. But now you can find just bull riding everywhere. Did you feel, looking back now, you had a lot of freedom. I call it, you could throw a lot of spaghetti on the wall and see which part of it stuck in trying a lot of innovative new ideas. If it didn't work, we could just sweep it under the rug and nobody remembered, right?
Yeah. There was a lot of that going on in those early years. We made a lot of mistakes, but I think we were smart enough to move off those mistakes or fix them. I mean, I can't tell you the countless arguments I had with my board. Especially Cody Lambert is one of my best friends to this day. We talk every week, always have. But Cody and we could get a massive fight over one point. But we might not talk to each other for 2 weeks. But when we come together, we both concede a little bit, and it would always be for the better. And every time we did that, we came out with something that worked even better. And, at that time, I'd be so pissed because I thought I had the right idea. And I will say, in those early years, it wasn't who had the best idea in the PBR, because there was so much passion between our board. It was who was willing to fight and kick and yell and cuss the loudest was going to get their idea. And that's really, and I'm not kidding on that. I've seen chairs flying through boardrooms. I've seen, we've seen the fights, and you've heard about them. I sat through them. But it was all for the betterment of the sport. And when we would take chances, adding $1 million the first time or doing this, Flint, for 2 weeks before some of these events, and I would get up in the middle of the night, and I would throw up for an hour. I would be so nervous for two weeks, not just the night before. I'm talking 2 weeks. It was just, can we afford this? If this doesn't work, we're done. And now, those things, everyone wants to say, oh, it was, PBR was destined to make it. We had a great board. We had a great staff. That everyone we had on our team was, if you didn't work hard, you weren't going to make it in our company. We just, I think that there was a lot more blood, sweat, and tears than people realized went into that.
I remember. And Cody Lambert, I mean, it has taken me a lot of years to realize he's not near as big an asshole as he presents himself.
He wants to be that look.
Oh, he does. He's a teddy
bear.
There's a heart.
That's Winnie the Pooh inside right there.
It is. I will agree with you. But I look back now. I'll go somewhere. I think we start to take for granted a rodeo or some bull riding somewhere. Every time the dirt starts on fire and there's letters in the dirt at any event anywhere, that's a PBR innovation. That started with PBR. The lighting, the pyro, music was a part of rodeo, but we took it a different level. There were a lot of things I think people have forgotten started. I mean, burning PBR in the dirt in today's modern world of pyro and lasers and projection images, it's a pretty primitive way of doing things. We still do it because we started that. There's a lot of those things.
I'll give you a couple more that people never think about. But, I mean, bringing Randy Spragan's having a dirt doctor, I call him the dirt doctor,
yep.
At every event to make sure our dirt was perfect. Now you look at how many rodeos use Randy and to do that. But you know, one of the biggest ones that nobody ever thinks of, and I'll put with my dying day, I want it to be one of my most proudest things I ever did. And this is going to sound so stupid, but you being in the barrel, I think you'll see it. You know, the clowns used to be clowns. They used to dress up like clowns out there. And I'm like, why? I'm looking at a hockey game going, these guys look intimidating. They look professional. And our clowns look like clowns. And yet these got the most important job. They're lifesavers. And when we took them out of those clown outfits and put them in uniforms, to me, it made the sport not only more professional, but it gave a purpose for those guys that they're not clowns. They're amazing athletes that do an amazing job of keeping those Cowboys out of danger. And I think nobody, I've never had one person say, wow, that's great that the PBR changed.
Yeah, NFR does it. Certain rodeos give them uniforms to wear. Then I switched over to a uniform, and it was a little brighter. I kept the makeup to keep that tradition. And
you're an entertainer, though. You're not a clown. You're
right. But, the makeup separated me from them. But now I see barrelmen in their uniforms. And that, good point. I forgot. I remember the first year Rob Smets showed up in a uniform. It was a CarQuest one. And then that was that transition of they all should. Now it's just part of the deal.
We went. I knew if Rob did it, the rest of everybody would follow. So Rob was our guinea pig, and you gotta love. Who doesn't love Rob? And when Rob wore it, it was like instant. Everybody liked it. Nobody ever laughed at it. It could have been a laughing stock too.
Who the whole, still to this day, the basis for everything we've talked about today, from pro rodeo to the American to the PBR, is corporate dollars. Who did you take in those initial years? It took a lot of corporate dollars. Bud Light was the first one, right?
Bud Light was first one. Yeah, they were there before I came. Bill Selman was there then.
Right.
And then we brought Jack Daniels. We were the first sponsorship Jack Daniels has ever done in history. Wrangler, we brought in. That time, Greg Tusa was at Wrangler.
Yep.
And Louis Russo was right there behind him. And then it just started rolling. But we really, up until we did the network television deal, we were still doing maybe $3.5 million in sponsor. I don't recall the exact number. But, we took so much. I took so much heat. My entire management quit when they heard that I bought the television rights for $6.5 million and had just done a deal with NBC for a couple of $1 million. They were like, we're gonna be broke. So they all quit and said they needed to fire me. And then if they didn't fire me, that they were gonna quit. And so we got Ty Murray and Cody Lambert on the phone, and Ty goes, "Hey Randy, can you do me a favor?" After he listened to him, he goes, "Hey, will you fire every one of them MFers?" And everybody looked like, this is backfiring on us. And when we got the big 2.4 rating, it was like the next week, it was like a waterfall. It was like the money started flowing in, and it was just like, holy smokes. It was, and I think we took it to $20 million in sponsorship in a very short time after we started getting the network television. And the network television has to be the biggest single event that took PBR to another level.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Still, we'll do those hour, we'll do something. We had these 15-15 deals, and it's a 1 hour CBS show after an NFL game. We have learned, even in the in-arena, that's a big deal to be on network after an NFL game. To me, that's where you gather fans that weren't already fans. That's critical. Corporate dollars and fan-wise, which of course ties together. So, yeah.
I counted up. I added up how many I've sold right at, or with my IndyCar, PBR, Garth, I've sold over right at $1 billion in sponsorships since, or at least been under my reign of all those in my short time. So that's a pretty fun number to throw around.
Get him. We should. Hey guys.
It looks like Pendleton Whiskey's doing a pretty good job.
They're okay for now. That's just, we're working on that. That's you mentioned IndyCar. I know that we all have jobs or things in our life that don't necessarily go the direction we want them to. IndyCar, I know, was challenging for you. What'd you take from that or learn I know that's a generic question, but we take from everything.
Well, I have my philosophy in life is, when you saw me move on from PBR, you very seldom see me at events and you don't see me at IndyCar events but once or twice. And my philosophy in life is there's a reason why your windshield's bigger than your rearview mirror. When you leave it behind you, because it will be gut-wrenching to see your little baby change into a different property that you don't like, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I made a determination when I left the sport. I left it. But going back to the question about IndyCar, first of all, IndyCar over 15 straight years, and this is public, it had been in the paper, they had lost $30 million a year for 15 straight years. So my job was to come in and try to stop the bleeding, which I did. I made it break even in 3 years. But, I had some pretty bad breaks. I had the Dan Weldon death. A lot of people tried to pin that on me. I had death threats. It was probably some of the worst time of my life, that 3 or 4 months. And then I had a major sponsor. I had Continental Tire that was willing to come in and pay $36 million as a sponsor. And Firestone was paying $500,000, and they were giving some endorsements, and they were giving some tires and stuff like that. So it was more than that. But bottom line was, I felt strong enough on that, and the board felt that differently. And I felt if I can't do my job, it wasn't best for me to be there. We decided that it was best for me to move on. I was there 3.5 years. I did a great job. The biggest lesson that I will take that you questioned was that do things in life that you love, that you're passionate about. Cars wasn't one of the things I was passionate about. I was passionate about making them money or getting them to even was what drove me every day. But it wasn't my Western lifestyle is my passion. I have to be attached to talking to you and talking to people that I love to be around. And that's me. And I was miserable. And I've told so many people, if whatever you do in life, it's got to be about what you love. I don't care if I get paid doing what I'm doing, because I love what I'm doing. Over there, I had to get paid because I could not. It was not me. So that's how I've always looked at it. Money will come if you love what you do, if that's important to you.
Yeah, I think you bring up an interesting point. PBR wise, but reality is, in the corporate office, there are a lot of people there that have never even been to a rodeo. And admittedly so, there needs to be that balance in an organization as well, where you have those people that are completely passionate about it's still a Western sport. And you need to know the type of people you are marketing to and playing to. And you need to know that marketing side. But I'm with you. I think an organization, not just a person, needs to have that passion. The organization needs to have the passion for what they are selling and presenting as well.
No doubt. My lesson in life on that was Rick Pitino's book. I think it's called Success is a Choice, where he says, I only hired people with PhDs. And my HR, you've probably heard me say this 100 times, but my HR department, there was only one. I didn't care what degree. You could have a degree from Harvard, but if you had this PhD over here, I was going to hire you every time. And that stood for passion, hunger, and drive. And if someone had that was when I would do an interview. If I saw that in someone, they loved the PBR, or they loved marketing, or they loved something, I could teach them in Western lifestyle. I couldn't teach. I can't teach someone that passion and drive. And it worked every time. We had amazing staff around us. And I mean, I would be nothing without everybody that we had around us.
Yeah. I think I see it right now in talking about, we joke about Cody Lambert, but Cody Lambert, the people on like competition committee, other bull riders, I think I grew up around rodeo, and I roped a lot like you. And I have a passion for rodeo and the competition, but I think maybe the biggest challenge, especially in the PBR, is that the way you present a show, there's a competition. You got to present the competition, but you have to present the entertainment and production as well. Meeting in the middle with cowboys and their competition, let's just ride some bulls. Let's just do it. That is a huge challenge. Our friend Clayton Cullen, of all people, used to put it a good way, said we're a professional sporting event wrapped in a Broadway show, in a sense. That is a huge challenge, I think.
It is. And I think my whole philosophy on that was that I wanted people saying, wow, at least 2 or 3 times during the event. And one of them had to be in the opening, because the opening is, I just spent $75 on my ticket. Show me what you got. And your first 15 minutes, I don't care if I just met you. Your first 15 minutes, you're going to give me an impression on you. And that to me was a very important impression. And the bull riding is going to be absolutely amazing if you just let it run its course. So if you can
takes care of itself. Yeah, we always say the same thing. Yes,
it does. And so that was really important to me. And I think when you hear compliments from like Bernie Taupin, who's been to every rock show in the world and says this is a more rock and roll performance than most performances you go to, those are huge compliments. Bernie, as you know, was a big fan of the PBR.
Yeah, he used to come around a lot. It's funny how many times I would hear there'd be Hollywood people. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but when we used to go to Anaheim, California, one year we went and there was like 25 like TV stars, musicians. We used to call Anaheim the RBI, the Randy Bernard Invitational. all the people, but we met such great people. Even recently this year, we lose Tommy Lasorda. We felt like that was a loss for the PBR because he was around so much.
And he was an ambassador. He loved us. I mean, he was an ambassador. I'll never forget Tommy and I were good friends. I traveled with Tommy. I went to Vegas with Tommy, and Tommy went to IndyCar with me. He went to PBRs. We did stuff all the time together. Well, one time his manager, Steve, was. I go, hey, when's Tommy gonna get here? He goes, I don't think he's coming tonight. I don't think he felt good. This is Anaheim. This is 10 minutes from his house. He's gonna come. So Steve goes over and goes, Tommy, get your ass down here. Get out of your pajamas. Randy says you need to be down here. He calls him Junior. He goes, Junior, I am not going down there tonight. I'm in my pajamas. I'm here. And there's a lot of swear words, I can promise you.
Yeah, completely.
And he goes, well, so I'm thinking, I look out over in the corner of my eye, I see Bo Derek. I go, tell him I'll sit him next to Bo Derek. It wasn't 10 minutes later, Tommy Lasorda was right there.
Since you're sharing stories, I don't usually do this, but World Finals one year, Bo Derek was there. And I was doing the boneless chicken deal, but where I flop around.
Yeah.
And right away, in the middle of it, I'm laying on the dirt, and Bob Feist was announcing. So he just kind of
I know exactly what you're going to say. I remember this to a T.
My greatest line ever. And he goes, well, here with Bo Derek. And I stood up and I said on my microphone, Bo Derek, that'll put a bone back in your chicken pretty fast. And Ty Murray,
I remember like yesterday.
Ty was doing TV, and we were at commercial, and I walked by, and he takes his headphones off like this, and he said, hey, that's the funniest shit you've ever said in your life. Yeah, World, I'm glad you reminded me of the Bo Derek line. Yeah, that will put a bone in your chicken. So.
Oh, God. Those were I would never trade those times for anything in the world. It was the best time. And then we were just learning. Every day was a new experience. Everybody came to work and knew if you didn't work hard that you weren't going to make it in the PBR. I mean, nobody got a free ride. Nobody was there that didn't deserve to be there.
I was pushed by people like Tommy Joe Lucia and you, and it was always we have to do it better. This is when you're in buildings. I don't think people understand this. When you are in a building like Madison Square Garden or Staples Center, especially Madison Square Garden, that's the biggest example I use. The people that go to events in that building expect to see the cleanest, most professional, sharpest show ever presented in the world. That's what Broadway is right down the street. So when you walk in that building and you look at all those pictures on the wall in the back hallway, you better have your crap together because they expect the best, and they will tell you if it's not the best.
That's no doubt. And as we always did. We were always fed. I mean, we just grew every year. That was fun.
We joked about the hallway conversation. That was so unusual then to, when I told people in rodeo, I'm going to exclusive PBR. That was unheard of. Like that was not first, I had won every award in rodeo, and that was like going to the USFL from the NFL in a sense. It was just so unusual. Now there's a lot of that. To be an employee, I'm still an employee of the company.
Oh, well, you were the highest paid employee there for several years. I can tell you, over me, I'm sure. You were like, I was like, I'm going to take some crap for this one. I can't believe I just gave, but not one, no, I didn't take anything from the board. The board was like, whatever, like,
Yeah.
So, I wish I could tell numbers because it was for those days, it was major, major, major money.
Well, and I have it all left, Randy. It's all still here. Before I let you go, biggest, I talked about, I think a big obstacle in production is competition theater, basically. In the scheme of Western sports that you have, I know how passionate you are. You've contributed with the American, with the PBR, everything through the Cowboy Channel. What is either culturally, economically, business-wise, for Western sports, bull riding, rodeo, what's the biggest challenge that lies out there to grow and get bigger?
I love that question because I think about it often, and I think that rodeo is in a very peculiar spot because of calf roping, because of team roping, because of steer wrestling. That my belief is that you need rodeo to become somewhere in the middle because you don't want it to become as big as NASCAR because you get the negative that comes with it. Right now, it's under the radar. I'd like to see the money grow substantially. I'd like to see there be, there needs to be some guys win a couple $1 million, $2 or $3, $4 million a year eventually, because you have so many rodeos, and it is a Western lifestyle that is so big. And I just think there's room for that kind of growth. But I think that you don't want it to be so big that it brings all the negativity with it too. And there's a fine line for that.
Yeah, I think Cowboys are in a tough spot. I talked about it on this podcast with Tyson Durfee. Cowboys are in a tough spot. Everybody wants Cowboys to make more money, and then when they make more money, oh hell, they're just making more money. They're a sellout, or they are. It's such a tough balance. And yeah, I've always said, do you really want mainstream, the things that go along? It's sort of like, do you really want everyone to know who you are? Believe me, do you really want all of that? So, well, I will say, for one, I think this was a great conversation. But, when your name comes up, I always say, he was my boss. He's the one that came to me in the hallway and said, I want you to be exclusive PBR. I called you back. It was June when I called you back.
I know it was. I was so let down for a couple of weeks because you just didn't. I think I offered you, a couple $100,000 more or something. You didn't even call me back. And then in June, you finally called me. Go, I'm tired of rodeos. Let's talk.
Is that offer still good? And you said, you damn right it is. But you made a big difference in my career and the way what I had to offer my girls growing up. Anyway, I've just appreciated, what you did for me professionally, but I also know every time I run into you, we can BS just like we're friends too.
I love it. And you, like I said, you're such an important part of our sport. I mean, my fear, this was my fear when I was CEO of PBR, and I've talked to you about this, is who is the next Flint Rasmussen? To me, it's such an important part. And you're just not going to be able to put anyone in that arena, and it's not going to be the same. I mean, it's going to be a letdown, and it's. I just dang sure didn't want to be there when you left. So that was. You just said you were going to retire. I'd have retired a couple of years earlier.
Man, I'll tell you, with social media and eyes on us all the time, it's sure become a lot harder. I can say that it's a harder job. Just like the guy that you manage, I'm sure he'd say the same thing. That.
Oh, golly, yes. He's
harder in here.
But the thing of Garth is he's just such an easygoing man, and he's just he knows what he's doing is right, and as long as he can look himself in the mirror and say, I'm trying to make this world a better place, he has peace with it. And I mean, I have peace working for him. I've never worked for a man in my life that I love so much. I mean, he's just a guy that he's never raises his voice. He's so even keel, but you want to just work your butt off for him. And he's just been an amazing person to work with.
Well, when you get back to a stadium, you offered once and then everything kind of shut down. I want to come to a show. I've never been to a Garth Brooks show all these years.
David Allen. Bring David.
I'll bring the fellas here.
All right.
The whole accordion.
Garrett said we'll make it good.
Yeah, you got it. Randy, this has been a pleasure. I appreciate the stories and your friendship and everything you brought to the Western sports world. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Flint. Really appreciate it.
You got it. Randy Bernard, everybody. Perfect. That Oh, perfect.
Was
That was
that all
fun.
right?
Oh, shoot.
No.
I hope it was okay for you.
As long as you guys like it, I'm happy. I laugh my ass off during this.
Hey, I want